Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first member-based webinar on live versus design mode. This is a new feature that David introduced after the first of the year. And while it's not a feature specifically for members only, we're going to do this training for members only, but we'll make the video available for all users, members and guests. At this time, I'm going to unmute everybody's microphone, but I want you to mute it on your end to cut back on the background noise. Raise your hand if you have a question, or you can send one to me and I'll forward it on to David. We've got about 60 minutes available here. And with that, I'm ready to turn it over to David Book. David?
Well, good morning, everybody. I say good morning because it's 11 a.m. here. I should probably say afternoon or evening or middle of the night or midday or who knows where you're at. I'm going to ask Warren to allow me to share my screen first because I think he's got to click a button on his end to do that. So we'll show the screen there. And I've got some neat things to go over today, which is kind of cool. The first thing I want to talk about is we'll try to stick to a little agenda here, but the first thing I want to talk about is a new application that I got called Reflector. And Reflector is an app that goes on your Mac. I'm guessing you can see my screen right now. Reflector is an app that goes on your Mac that allows you to mirror your actual iPhone to your Mac. And so that might not seem like that big of a deal, but it is a big deal because you'll see here up on my screen, the phone on the right, the large one, is my Mac or my iPhone, live just like I would normally use it. And so, if I wanted to dial or make a phone call, or if I wanted to open up my messages or watch Netflix or something like that, we can use our phone in our hand and mirror it to the screen, which allows us to use it for examples and recordings and things like that. So you guys can get an idea of what's on my phone here, and you can see the apps that are on my phone. And then on the left, we have the simulator running. And the reason that this is important is because today we're going to be comparing live versus design mode. So before I move on real quick, I wanted to give a quick shout out to one of our community members, Kristen, in the forum, sent me this Reflector app, this app I'm using on my Mac, as a Christmas gift, which I thought was tremendous. And he may or may not realize how much I appreciated it because I was looking for exactly this kind of solution. And so, yeah, we're gonna be taking advantage of that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna launch this app on my phone. I've called it the Live app, this little test app that I've built. And it's a pretty generic app with a menu, on the home screen and a refresh button like we're all used to. And this large, it probably looks like a simulator to you, but this large iPhone on the screen is in my hand, and this small iPhone that's on the screen is the simulator. And so you can see here that in Xcode, I compiled this very, very simple app that we're going to play with in our control panel. I compiled this in in design mode and launched it on the simulator. That's what we have on the left. And then I changed this to live mode, current mode, I set it to live, and then I launched this on my iOS device. So that's what you have on the screen, is a live version of my app on my phone and a design version of my app on the simulator. So before we get too carried away with some of the details, let's go to my control panel for this particular application, and I'll demonstrate how this is supposed to work. So this is my application, and you can see on the Publish Changes option, which is the new option we introduced last week, you can see that it has a green dot. And what that means is the design data and the live data match. And I can do a bunch of different things to prove that to myself, but I can look at the configuration data in my control panel, and I can click the design mode data, which you'll see here, current mode design, this data matches the live mode data. So the live mode data, see here, current mode live, is exactly the same. So if I refresh my phone that I'm holding in my hand, and I refresh the simulator, we get the exact same thing. So here's where it starts to get fun. If I go to our screens, let's say that on our menu screen, our home screen menu, I want to add, I want to make a change to this. Let's just for fun, let's add Yahoo. I'll make a new screen, and I'll do another custom URL because it's just so much faster. And I'll add that to our menu. So now our home screen menu has two items. It has Google and it has Yahoo. And so if I refresh the simulator, you'll see that I get both those items because this is in design mode. If I refresh my phone in my hand, which is the same app, I get nothing because I have not, quote, published those changes. And the way that I know that is because now I have a red dot up here. So I can continue to work in the control panel and do all different kinds of things until I'm ready to hit the publish button. And when I hit the publish button and in essence sync or save those changes, then this live device in my hand will tell me that changes have been made, you should refresh, on and on and on. So usually I go about 20 minutes or so in these webinars before I take any questions, but I'm going to stop right there and take some questions because I want to make sure that everybody understands basically what I just said. If I hit refresh on the phone, nothing happens. I'm going to hit the publish button, and you can see now that we've published these changes because it's a green dot. And if I hit refresh on the phone now, you're going to see we get both of them. So pretty cool how that's supposed to work. But let's stop it right there and make sure that I didn't lose everybody, because I think we're probably going to run into, you can see here, I just got a text message from my wife. I better dismiss that. Funny stuff. It's amazing how I can just show my phone on the screen and record it live. Let's hope that nobody calls me. So anyways, Warren, why don't we see if we can get some questions at that point? I don't think we will, but we might. Everybody in the audience list, it looks like, is pretty familiar with kind of us and how we do this, and so I think we probably won't have any questions to that point, but let's give them a minute. And you can sometimes ask a good question too. Did what I said and kind of covered, did that make sense to you, Warren?
Well, it did as much as I could pay attention. I was trying to get my end up and working here with the recording,
Got it.
so
No
I
problem.
apologize, David. But
Yeah, no problem.
that Reflector app, you said that KB sent that to you. And
yeah, Kristen saved me.
What did that cost you?
He just sent it as a gift. I don't know what he paid for it.
Oh, okay.
Here's the website. I brought this up to promote these guys because every time I use something that I like, I really, really enjoy it. It looks like if we go to the buy button, it is about 15 bucks, $12.99. And so the cool thing is on my screen, if I go to my Reflector app, you'll see here I have a menu up on the top, and I can change the skin for the iPhone. I can, make it white. I can do all kinds of things, which depending on what I'm using it for, I can do a screen recording right from here. I can do landscape and portrait mode. I can put it full screen. I can do all kinds of things. And the way that it works is when you launch an app, let me show you. This is my home screen here. So if I launch, for example, the BART app, which I use to find the subway when I'm in the Bay Area, that's kind of cool. But what gets reflected on the screen is when you double tap the home button and you scroll all the way to the left, you can see that it shows up in your AirPlay monitor, in your AirPlay menu. So I could AirPlay this to my computer instead of my TV or something like that, which is pretty slick. Anyway, so that's how Reflector works. And it doesn't look like we're having any questions about live and design mode. So let's test this a little bit further and make sure that we all understand. Let's make one more change on our control panel. And let's do this. Let's go to the theme. And we'll set the theme's navigation background, the navigation bar background color to black. And I'll save this. You'll notice when I save this, our published changes screen now, this is red. So on the live app here, we're not going to notice. Watch, I'll relaunch this on the phone and I won't get notified of any changes. But if I minimize this on the simulator and then launch it on the simulator, so you notice the app's content has changed. So that it works just like we would expect it to work. If I refresh the live mode, I don't have those changes. I can click the publish button, and now I do have those changes. So we're pretty excited about what this allows us to do. And so let me talk a little bit about the reason we did it. The number one reason we did this is a lot of people were having some trouble in that their live apps were in the wild on a bunch of devices, and then they were making changes in their control panel and experimenting with these changes, and in essence breaking their apps. Some breaking is a strong word sometimes. They weren't actually breaking them, but they were making changes that they didn't want their audience to see yet. And so that makes that makes for a challenge. And so let's go back to Xcode and make sure that we understand technically what's happening here. So I'm going to open up Xcode, and we're going to review what I already explained in the beginning, and just to touch on it again. There's a new property in your application's configuration data, and it's called current mode. So when that's set on design and you compile, then the application requests design data. And when it's set at live, then it requests live data. So that means you'll want to switch that to live before you compile for an app store or for distribution or something like that. It's design. So the way that it works is pretty simple actually on the phone's end. In our delegate file, we've got a couple of methods. We're all familiar with these methods. One of them is the report to cloud method, and this is the most confusing, I think, one of the most confusing methods that we have, because a lot of people just don't understand how it works. So really all this method does is it hits a URL and asks that URL, sounds like somebody's got an ambulance coming, asks that URL if the information for this application has changed. The way that it asks it if it has changed is it just returns a simple little date string, a little date value, and I'll show you what it returns. So let's run this in the simulator again.
Yes.
I'm going to hit this refresh button. I'm sorry. I'm going to minimize.
No, actually,
and do the live app again.
Didn't actually
and
have a chance to actually go over our
here,
marketing budget.
somebody's talking. I'm not sure
already
who that is. Maybe we can
all of this
there.
year, but maybe Nick.
Background sound there. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Warren. Let me show you the report to cloud URL so that you can see what's returned. What's going on here? So you can see what's returned from this thing, and really all it returns is a date stamp. And so the URL that gets, why my output console's not printing here? Did I clear the thing? Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to pull that. See this reporting to cloud address right here? I'm going to copy this address, and I'm going to open up my regular browser, and I'm going to show you the results of that call. So you notice here, that is all that gets returned from the server when you report to cloud. So if this value is different than the value that's saved on the device, then it prompts the user to refresh the data. So when we are in live mode or design mode, the software, your app, is appending that to the end of the URL. And I'll show you where it does that. See where it says current mode equals self current mode? So current mode is going to equal this value in your configuration data. So if the current mode is live, or if the current mode is design, you can see at the end of our URL, just stuck it on the end, and then the API knows, BuzzTouch.com API, the API knows which data to return. So technically that's how it's working. So let's leave this tab open. I'm going to open up another tab. And whoops, I typoed, I think. There we go. And I'm going to make this one at the end live. So I just change this at the end of live. And I'm going to leave this one at design, and I'm going to hit refresh. And you'll notice that these two values are the same. I'm going to move this to a new window so we can compare them side by side. Yeah, we'll do it this way. I'm going to go to the control panel. I'm going to make a simple change. I'll go to the, how about we go to the core settings, and we'll just hit save. It doesn't matter what we change. The point is we're making a change here. Now this is not in sync anymore. So if we look at the design screen, you'll notice that the last change here was 19/18/56. If we look at the live screen, it hasn't changed at all. I just hit refresh, and that hasn't changed. So the device asks for this value from a back end. In this case, it's our back end because I've got the report to cloud URL set to the control panel right here. You could set that to your own back end if you'd like. So it asks the back end for the value, and then once it gets the value and it downloads that value in the code here, in this connection did finish loading method, you can see that it parses this is JSON data. It parses this JSON data, and it looks for the key for last modified date, which is right here, last modified UTC. And if it's different than the previously saved value from the last time it checked to the cloud, it starts this alert. It shows the alert that says this app's content would change. Would you like to refresh? In fact, a lot of people have asked, and I'm going to get off on a little sidetrack here. A lot of people ask, how can I refresh the app's data without prompting the user? And it's actually pretty simple, because what's happening now is we're showing this alert that's offering the OK button, and we did that when the application got done downloading the configuration. You know, I'm losing myself here. When it got done downloading the last modified date, we launched the alert, and then if the user clicks the button that says, yeah, refresh this data, then we run a method called download data, which in essence is refresh. So we could, in the report to cloud method, we could comment out the part where it alerts them right here. We could just say, you know what, don't alert anybody. Just download the data automatically. Just do this quietly and watch how this works. Refresh quietly. Is that how you spell quietly? I think so. Quickly? Quietly? Maybe like that. Okay, so I'm going to put this back on the simulator and relaunch this. And I'm going to show you how this will not prompt the user for a content change, even though we're going to make a content change. And it'll just get it automatically. So if we go to our control panel, where the simulator's in design mode, the phone is in live mode, we'll go to our screens, and why don't we reorder these? I'll make Yahoo #1 and Google #2. So if I hit refresh, these two would switch. We're looking for Yahoo on top, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to demonstrate to you how, when I launch this app for the next time, it's not going to prompt the user for a change, for a content update, but it is going to notice those content updates and download them automatically. There you go. So Yahoo and Google. So all we did was uncomment the alert method, comment the alert method, and added the download data method in its place. It's been brought to our attention a few times that we should probably make that a control panel option. Maybe a checkbox that says prompt user for content changes, or do them automatically, or do them quietly. I love that idea, and we are definitely we're already working on that because it's a tremendous feature. The problem with that is if they're in offline mode, if they're offline or in airplane mode, and your app is set to do it automatically, and you might get some errors or something, but we can probably work that out. At any rate, so that's how the live and design mode is working in the iOS, the Objective-C. It does the exact same thing in the Android project, and really what that thing is it's just appending that value to the end of the URL when it reports to cloud. It's just appending current mode equals, and then self equals current mode. And then, of course, our backend API is looking at that value and returning the data accordingly. So current mode equals design. So that's, in essence, the root of how all of this works. I'm going to ask a question of anybody out there to see if they're curious about something a little bit more technical. Does anybody have any interest in understanding more, maybe more concretely, what's happening behind the scenes, like on our back end, so that you can look at your control panels and the self-hosted, when we release that new self-hosted version, which is coming real quick. Do you guys want to see what happens when you hit publish, or do you not really care how we're managing the difference between live and design mode data on our end? Does that have any value to talk about that? It's a little bit nerdy, but we can certainly have that conversation if anybody's interested.
Hey, David.
Yes.
Let's see. I see yes, yes, duh, yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Well, I've not seen any of that stuff, so I heard duh. That means we got a bunch of technophobes in here, which is great.
And as one person says, we like nerd speak.
We like nerd speak. Okay, perfect. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up the BuzzTouch server self-hosted. Let me find it here. I'm going to open up the self-hosted panel I have on this box. And we'll go to here, and we'll go to here, and we'll go to here, and we'll go to here.
Hey, David.
Okay. Yeah.
While you're doing that, I don't know if you're seeing my pop-up messages. I've been sending you a few.
I'm not, but now I see that they're collapsed. Yeah. I see them now.
Okay.
And it looks like Ronnie has his hands up, so let's take Ronnie's question before we move on. Sorry about that, guys. I wasn't paying attention. So,
okay. Ronnie, you're unmuted if you'd like to ask your question.
Okay, great.
Actually, I'm not sure if Ronnie can hear us or not, but it's basically...
Yeah, I'm not sure. I certainly can't hear Ronnie.
Well, there's two parts to it, one of which I think you're getting ready to show us right now. And the second would be the first question I would have, too. How do we implement this, or how can we put this in our existing applications?
Yeah, basically there's a range of answers to that, from super simple to super complex. I'll try to start with the simplest answer. The simplest answer is you're going to need to download your project, recompile it, and submit an update to Apple or the Google Play Market. And that's because your existing application that's already in the wild doesn't have any understanding of anything we just talked about. It doesn't know how to append current mode to the end of the report to cloud URL. So hopefully that answers your question. Now, if you don't want to recompile, or if you don't want to re-download your project, maybe you made a ton of changes to it. Maybe you don't necessarily, you're not comfortable maybe redoing all of that stuff. What you could do is you could open up your configuration data in your existing project. I'm assuming this is a relatively modern project, not like an old 1.5 project. You're not going to have this key here in your JSON, so you'd have to introduce this key. You'd have to literally type in current mode design or current mode live, right? Because your configuration data is not going to have that in the app that you already compiled and already put in the App Store. So you would add the mode, or, add this key, current mode, and give it a value, live. You would go to your application's delegate file, and you would replace the report to cloud method, and you would replace this connection did finish loading method. And you can get those from, you could re-download your project and just look at those two methods and just copy and paste them and throw the project away that you downloaded if you didn't want to use it. But those are the only two places I can think of. Somebody may prove me wrong here when they try to do that, but I believe that those are the only two things that we changed in the actual iPhone project, is the report to cloud and the connection did finish loading in the app delegate, and that's because these are what downloaded the proper data. So another way you could do it is just copy the whole app delegate file and replace the whole thing. And again, unless you made changes to it in your existing project, then that would work. And of course, the exact same logic is going to be the case with Android. The Android's got its own report to cloud and its own download data method. And so to recap what I just said, the easiest way would be to re-download and recompile your project. But if you've made a bunch of changes, custom changes after you got it from us, from your control panel, you're going to have to kind of ninja style hack around a little bit and see, update those methods in your project. But no matter what, you're going to have to redistribute your software. And then one thing that's a little caveat of that, anytime you redistribute a version of your software to your end users, anytime you do that, not all of your users will get that update. Believe it or not, there are users that don't update their phones. And if they don't, they're still going to be in what we would now call design mode. And so it's just like before. You make a change to your control panel and they're going to see it. And that's an interesting thing that Go Northwest brought up on the forum a week or so ago that is definitely easy to lose sight of, is if you've got old apps out there on phones, they're definitely going to be still in design mode no matter what. Every change you see or every change you make is going to tell them about it. So that's how that works. So I didn't hear Ronnie. Maybe that was not Ronnie's question. I doubt it was. I think that was Warren's question. Should we give? No, it doesn't even look like we can give Ronnie another try. It looks like he's offline, but maybe we can turn his mic on again and see if he's got a better connection. I can hear noise, but I can't hear you actually talking. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Maybe it's a microphone thing. I know these GoToWebinars are pretty reliable. Maybe I'm not sure. I can't hear you though. Maybe try to type your question if it's not too long.
Well, I had forwarded you his original question, and
yeah, I don't see it.
All right. So here's his original question. Can you show the configuration and can you show the configuration data and cloud URL? And can you give specific impact on this fantastic feature on an already published Apple app?
Specific impact. Not sure even what that means. Like, can I give an example of somebody that's doing well with it? I can't think of any. Actually, it's only been out a week, and I've not heard from anyone on our end that's actually implemented it and is thrilled with it. But let me revisit that in just a sec. Can you show the configuration data and cloud URL? Sure. So the configuration data and cloud URL in the address bar, I'll show it in a couple of different places, is a pretty, I'll kind of break it down here. Basically, and I'm going to take all this end stuff off of here for now. So if I cut that off, it's basically going to our back end, but this could be your back end. And then it's adding a bunch of parameters in what we call the query string. For web developers, you'll understand what that means. But the query string is everything past the question mark. And sometimes you'll see the name of the actual file, like this would be index.php. But you'll see the query string has a bunch of variables, and they're keys and values. So the keys are on the left of the equal signs and the values on the right of the equal sign. The first value starts with a question mark, and then all the others are separated with an ampersand, the and character. So we're sending a command to the API, report to cloud. We're sending an app GUI ID or guaranteed unique ID. We're sending an API key. We're sending an API secret. The device ID is a merge field. I copied this out of our control panel in the core settings. Report to cloud URL. I copied this from here, and I've included a merge field in this app so that the device sends its latitude, its longitude, and its ID if available. And that's why you see the brackets in the URL up here. And that's what drives some statistics on our back end, the device latitude. And then at the end, we just have current mode. It's the last one. Design equals design. I could add something else to this. I could say, I I don't know, screen color, blue. I could do whatever I wanted. I could put any kind of parameters or any kind of types of keys and values at the end of this URL, as long as I knew that my script on the back end knew what to do with those. And that would be in the case of writing your own custom custom handler. When it goes to the API, adding things at the end is not going to do anything because we don't look for everything that you could possibly add to it. So that's the report to cloud URL. Now the data URL is the exact same concept. The only difference between this URL and this URL is the command. So the way our API works is you issue commands, right? So when we download data for the app, meaning it needs to be updated, the command is get app data. When we download data to just get the last modified date, the command is report to cloud. So these two URLs are exactly the same. As an interesting side note, I could copy this config data, save it to a text file, put it on Dropbox, put it on my website, and in my report to cloud URL, I could just put, dropbox.com/myfolder/myappdata.txt or something like that, and just do it manually. Right? That's kind of the nature of what we're trying to do here, is allow all that different types of flexible stuff. But it does lead to confusion, that's for sure, which is why we end up answering so many questions. So that's the URL and the report to cloud URL. Now let's talk about this. Can you give specific impact of this fantastic feature on an already published Apple app? I'd have to say no at this time. I don't know anybody. Nobody sent me an email. I haven't been in the forums the last few days. Maybe somebody else knows. It's only been out a week, so it's not something that I have direct experience. I don't know any apps personally that have had fantastic or specific impact because of the feature. Wish I could help you there, Ronnie, and I just can't.
Well, Ronnie responded to me and says that you have answered his question.
Okay, perfect. So let's jump over, unless you hear another question, let's jump over before we run out of time. We have another half an hour or so to this back-end stuff. And I know this gets out of the realm of most people's understanding, but I'll try to explain this. Okay, so whether you're on, it doesn't matter what web page we're on or what server we're on, ours or yours, it's going to work exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Publish Changes screen in my control panel, and I'm going to show you that the file that I'm working on here is called bt_appversion.php. So that file I have open up here in my editor. It's right here. There's two tabs open in my editor. And then when you hit save, or publish in this case, publish, notice the page is not refreshing. It's making what we call an AJAX call, or a remote request, and it's posting some information from this screen to a script that just runs behind the scenes and returns its results, which in this case is saved. So that is the app version ajax.php script. So in looking at this file, you wouldn't necessarily know, unless you really dug deep, where this was being sent to. And so if I view the source of this web page, I might be able to sleuth out what happens when I click the Publish button. I'm just going to search for the Publish button here. And I'm doing this just to kind of demonstrate what web developers do all the time. So if you have the Publish button, which is right here, it's a button, an HTML input type of button. Its title is Publish. And when I click it, on click, it runs a JavaScript method called Save Screen Data. So where is that? Right? Where is the Save Screen Data method? Search for that. And you'll see that it doesn't exist in this file itself. So it's not so easy to sleuth out, but it's included as an external script. So the reason that I'm showing you that is it doesn't really matter how you send these changes to your back end. In this case, we like to use Ajax because it gives for a better user experience and you don't have all those refreshes. But that's fundamentally what the web page is doing. Let's look to see what's happening on the back end. So on the back end, this is the appversion.php file. This is the file that's the actual HTML form. So this is the HTML and the PHP that create this page. And you can see here that right at the top of it, BT app version. We have a little message, you know, when your app runs the report to cloud method. I'm just showing you that that's this. We're not looking at the live one on our server, so you're not going to see this message. Then you have a button, the publish button. You've got a box so you can update your current published version value if you want. That's just to help you keep track of the version you're working with. And you've got the submit button to save the screen data. So when we hit that button, we're going to execute a JavaScript method that's going to send all those values to this script, which actually isn't very long. And what's going to happen is it's going to make sure somebody's logged in. It's going to identify the user. It's going to set some variables like today's date, and it's going to grab the application's ID from the form or from the query string, the command. Remember those commands, get app data, this, that, and the other thing. It's going to grab the publish date and the version. It's going to be just doing a bunch of house cleaning here. It's going to make sure that the person's logged in, has the privileges to manage this app. And then if the form is posted, if this button is pushed, it's going to run the code from here to, looks long, but it's not scary, to here. So you see where it says was submitted? That's the end, the closing curly brace for is form posted or is form submitted. So make sure that our version's a number. If it's not a number, it's going to show a little red dot. Watch this. If I put an A here, it's going to show changes not saved, current version, numeric required. Just simple stuff. So this script said, hey, if the current version is not a number, this is the message, current version number required, and then it's going to exit. If we're still good, it's going to get the API key and the data directory for this app. It's going to make sure that the data directory is a directory and is writable. And it's going to create the JSON values. It's going to go to the database and fetch all the current values for this app. And it's going to build all the JSON data. It's a long, 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 long routine here. And then when it gets all done, it's going to save that data. It's going to open up a pointer to the application's directory on the file system. It's going to write that data, and then it's going to close. So when we click Publish, technically what's happening is we're taking all of this current data and we're saving it as one single file in the application's, in the web server's directory structure. That's why it's so much faster when you refresh a live app versus a design mode app, because it doesn't have to go to the database and recreate this every single time. So design mode, it does. Watch, if we had milliseconds, we could measure this on the screen, but design mode, watch how long this takes. Live mode is much faster. And live mode doesn't have to hit the database because it's already created this stuff and it's just getting the latest version. So I'll try to recap what I just said. Clicking save on the publish screen runs a routine that recreates all the JSON data for your app from the database, which is where everything gets saved to, and saves it to the file system. And then when you're running in live mode, your app asks for that file system data and not the database data. I hope that makes sense. It probably is going to stimulate a bunch of questions. I'm not sure. It's some pretty high-level stuff. There's all kinds of questions related to, ways to improve that or ways to cache that, and we can have that discussion a lot. I'm going to, kind of forever, I think. I'm going to visit, until I see another question here, I'm going to visit another concept that really, really confuses people. And it's not related to live or design specifically, but it's definitely related to how your app processes this data. So let's back up a little bit. We're in design mode. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to clear this output console, and I'm going to hit the refresh button on this simulator, and we're going to step through what in the heck is in this output console, because it really, really is supposed to help you. And a lot of people are intimidated by all the stuff, but we've done tons and tons of work to output useful information down here to help you try to debug things. But watch what happens down here when I hit refresh. It looks like a lot, but there's really not that much stuff. And it will show you exactly what's going on. So it's going to show you the name of the file, and it's going to show you the name of the method, and sometimes some additional information. So right here, live app delegate triggered the download app data method. So right away, I can look to that method, download app data, which is right here, and I can see that all of this ran. And if I want to step my way through what's going on, I can use the console with these little hints that we gave you to understand it. And incidentally, you see this line BT debugger, BuzzTouch debugger? That's literally the line that added this to the console. For example, I am here. We can change that line to make that console look different. I'll show you what I mean just to prove to you that it's the debugger that's adding things to the console for us. So let's launch this again. It's going to go through all its startup options and show you all kinds of stuff in the simulator here. I'm going to hit clear. And I'm going to hit refresh again, take us right back where we were. You see where it says download app data, I am here? We just added to that. So anyway, get rid of that. So it runs the download app data method. It shows progress, which is the little alert right here, or the little spinning progress bar. It's going to get the URL for the report to cloud, or for the download data. It's going to merge variables in the string. And remember our the API secret and the device ID and all that. It's going to launch this BuzzTouch downloader, which is going to download the file that's returned by this URL. Remember, at any time we can copy these URLs, paste them in a browser bar, as long as we have the right API key and credentials, and we can just get the same data. So some people make this far more confusing than it needs to be. Another little message, download file started, saving the file to the file system, hide the progress, validate that the configuration data is okay, looks like it's valid, delete the old cache data, configure environment, that means build the UI. It's going to parse all that data again. It's going to initialize a view controller for the home screen. So step by step by step, it tells us what's going on. So I'm going to clear this again and show you that we can do just about anything with this console to help us figure it out. Let's click Google, let's click the Yahoo choice and see what happens. So this is pretty easy. Did select row, I selected row 0. Get screen data for that screen. What type of screen is it? On and on and on. So if you're having trouble understanding what data your app is reading when it launches because it's not behaving the way you would expect it, the best advice is just clear this thing and hit refresh. If you don't have a data URL, it's going to read the app data that's compiled in your project. It's kind of that simple. So that's kind of a tip for people who don't quite understand, you know, what it is. We see it in the forum all the time. My app's not refreshing. My app's not syncing. Most of the time it actually is, and they don't quite understand, you know, what's going on there. So Ronnie's saying, hey, if it's running an iOS device for the first time, would he change it to current mode live first? The way I do it is I leave it in design until I'm ready to publish. Then right before I publish, I switch it to live, compile, send it to Apple, then go back to design and put it back on my simulator or put it back on my phone. That's how I do it. Really, the only thing.
Yeah, so David, thank you. This is Ronnie. So when you first install it or, you know, run it up there on your iOS device, you leave it in design there? Because when you were showing those two config files, one was design, one was live.
Yeah, I tend, it's kind of a preference. Something, and it's good that we can hear you now. Thanks for getting that straightened out. I tend to run my phone in my hand in live mode so that I can just kind of know that that's really what my end users, you know, are going to be doing. And then I run the simulator in design mode. That's kind of how I do it. But you could, it's just a matter of what you install on your phone when you put it on. And so, yeah, that's a great question. In fact, before I move on, it looks like there's another one in here from Jim. Elegantly simple engineering. Bravo. That's a compliment, not a question. It's simple. I think it looks simple. There's a lot going on behind the scenes to make all that possible, but I'm glad that it came out simple at least. Most of the things I do are horribly complicated, and I try to make them simple. But yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of room to go. We can talk about this a little bit. One of our really longtime users and friends and fans in the forum brought up the idea that on each particular screen, it would be useful in the advanced settings to have a mark as modified or mark as stale or mark as updated date, and just kind of manually control that. And I totally understand the need for that. Really, the idea is, you know, why is it re-downloading the entire app when really it might only need to change one little thing? Like in our case, we changed the order of the screen. So it's a neat feature. The problem with that is, of course, there's a few different problems. One is people would have to remember to hit the little, you know, this screen has changed button, which may or may not be a problem, but is definitely something to think about. And the other thing to think about is when you download, not all screens use data URLs. Not all of them are connected to a control panel, so to speak. Like this one, for example, is not connected to a control panel, this menu, which is why when I pull it down, I don't get the refresh option. If I connect this to the control panel and save this, watch this. Because it's now connected to a control panel, I can pull down to refresh. So I could change these values. Let's put them back the way we had them, 1 and 2, so Google's going to be on top. And now I can refresh this menu without refreshing the whole app. And so he brings up a good point, but my point is not all the screens have back-end data provided to them, so therefore it might be confusing even more. So, you know, that's kind of how that is. In fact, is Tim in our meeting here? Tim's oftentimes in these. No, I don't see him. I see the other Tim, but
Yeah,
not the Tim
Tim,
I'm thinking of.
Tim Walney.
Yeah, Tim's not the Tim I'm thinking of. Tim Wolf is the one who's always giving me fabulous ideas. He's really, really a kind of a high-level thinker in terms of the control panel. He's seen us evolve for a couple of years too, so he oftentimes adds really good value to what I'm trying to do, which is great.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's about all I have for live and design. I think that, actually, you know what? Do I want to go to? Yeah, go ahead, Warren.
I've got a really simple question.
Sure.
You're showing this to us in iOS. I assume the same is true for Android.
Yeah, so the Android project, my Eclipse takes forever to launch here. Let's do it this way. Let me see if I can find. I'll just use a text editor. My the Android project does exactly the same. It's exactly the same logic in theory, but obviously different kinds of source code. So in your apps delegate file for Android, let me find it here. Where is it? This is the David Debug app, so it's going to be David Debug app delegate right here. So in your Android file, and I'll just open this in a text editor so I don't have to wait forever. Eclipse takes painfully long to open. You're going to have the same kind of logic. So I'm going to search for report to cloud in this source code here. Find. Well, so much for that idea. Let's find it. Maybe it's not exactly called report to cloud in Android. I'm looking. Oh, you know what? I'm wrong. I'm jumping to conclusions. I'm losing sight. It's not in your delegate. It is in your BT screen. It's either the controller or the base class. Probably the base class. Let's find this. So I misspoke already. That's what I get for not going with notes. Yep, perfect. So the report to cloud method is in your the BuzzTouch activity base, and the reason for this is all of the other activity classes, which we call screens in iOS or views in iOS, these are called activities in Android. All these other activities are subclassed from, I'll show you, they are subclassed from the BuzzTouch activity base. You can see where it says extends activity base. So our activity base class is where a lot of the kind of generic built-in routines are. So when the screen loads, it tries to figure out if it needs to report to cloud and check to see if it to check for changes on the control panel. And when it does that, let's find it. You'll see how it appends. It'll append current mode to the end of the URL just like before. Report to cloud. Oh, you know what? This is an old version. I'm not looking at the right version. Hang on a minute here. Let's do this. Let me go back here just to make sure we're all on the same page because I'm going to run out of time. It's a good question. I should have covered it earlier. Let me just download the Android project for this app that we're working with, and I'll show you in that one. I was working with an old project. I get so many files on my machines. Okay, so here's the Android version. I'll unzip this. I'll go to the activity base in this new project. Get rid of this thing here. We'll go to the report to cloud method and we'll look for the current mode. Looking, dug through this stuff so much. Yep. So right here, you'll see where it adds the current mode property and value to the end of the report to cloud URL. So on Android, it is called report to cloud. The method's called the same thing. So there's a new method there, and then the download app data is going to be a little bit different. So I would have a look at those in your Android base class for all of you Android fans, which I'm trying to become an Android fan. I'm not anti-Android, but I'm definitely frustrated by Android on a regular basis for lots of reasons. So that answers the Android question. Looks like we got a couple minutes left. Not seeing any other changes there. Should we talk about we probably shouldn't talk about that. That's not important. But yeah, so we talked about Reflector. We talked about live versus design. We talked about how to update some older apps if you really want to get kind of ambitious and get in there and try to do it manually or do it by re-downloading your code, which is cool. Ronnie brought some great questions. I'm going to throw a challenge out there so that maybe we can get Ronnie a little bit more detailed answer. If anybody knows of an app that's in the wild this week that's been republished and resubmitted that is using live mode, I'd love to hear about it. Maybe one of us can reach out to Ronnie and show him that in the App Store, or I'd like to see it too. I think that would help a ton.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
Before you get away from it, Ronnie does have his hand up again. I think he has another question.
I heard him great last time, so let's hear it again.
Hey, thanks. I hope I'm not hogging the mic too much. But,
no, it's good.
So I have an app that I have distributed just within my company. It's to about 250 people just within the company, right? It's just sitting on the web server. And you got me thinking, if I upgrade this thing and some people are lazy and they don't refresh, what if I put up like a new splash screen on the existing app that says, hey, there's a new version of this app. Please go to this web server and install it.
Yep.
And the new server, the new IPA will be out on the web server ready to go. But because there's no way to tell them there's a new version. I can refresh content, but I can't send out a notice like the App Store does.
Yeah. So one trick to that, and it's good that you're distributing it internally to employees because our coworkers is just so much more flexible because you don't have to worry about a lot of things. But kind of the trick to that is I would set up a one-screen menu, just a regular list menu. Right. It says something like read this or call Ronnie or download app or something, and then I would set that as the home screen kind of temporarily, and I would force them to get
it. Good idea.
Whether it's a splash screen or just a pain in the butt, depending on the nature of your workers. Now, the one caveat with that is, of course, the people who are diligent and listen and read their email and are kind of within the enterprise, technical rules and all that, and they follow the rules. They're going to be annoyed by that for a little bit, but you might add it to the.
I really need to get them to remove the old version and then go to this web server and bring the new version down. And so that's my challenge, right? I don't want them to have two versions on their phone.
If you're using over-the-air distribution, which it sounds like you are, then you can just republish the new app file, and they should be able to just revisit the URL. They shouldn't have to actually remove the old app. It should overwrite it.
Okay, I've never done that before. Good. I guess I can try that.
Yeah, you can give that a go or whatever. But yeah, totally. Of course, the other trick is just make the old one not as good as the new one, and they'll want the new one. Nice to hear from you, Ronnie. I don't think we've met before. Where are you?
I'm over in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, you're close. You're close.
Well,
you're only 2,000 miles or 3,000.
Only 2,000.
Some people are like all over the world, which I think is wonderful, but it also is kind of interesting to learn where people are.
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out to everyone. I know we're almost out of time, but my only app is an app that's out in the Apple Store that helps honeybees. It's a honeybee mapping app, and I worked with Stobe for quite some time early on around mapping and how to get points out there, and I finally used his list builder tool as well for my internal app at the company, which is it's a disaster recovery app. Where if stuff really bad happens at a company, I want to make sure everyone's got all the phone numbers they need stored on their phone. So those are my two forays, and all of them were done with BuzzTouch. I love it.
Well, we love having you in the meetup, and we I'll look for your name on the forums, whatever. But that's good stuff. So Warren, let's wrap this thing up.
Okay, David. Well, as I always say, thanks, David, so much for your expertise and sharing it with us here, especially on this new feature. I think it's going to be a home run for everybody that's in the app development process. Happy to have you on here, and we'll have you again tomorrow night to talk about changes in the control panel that have happened since January 1st, and maybe you could give us just 15 seconds about that.
Yeah, so really a lot of that we actually covered. The two significant changes in the control panel are this live in design mode, which some people are going to not make this webinar, but are going to make that webinar. So we'll revisit that in kind of a less complex way. The other kind of interesting thing is we will show you. Let me go to the BuzzTouch self-hosted here that I've got a server set up. The self-hosted server that's coming, this is really what I think the focus of tomorrow's meeting will be, just because we can show a lot of the things that aren't yet on the buzztouch.com site. But when we're working with an application in the self-hosted panel, you also have this push notification screen, which we've promised to have released by this week's end. We're doing what we can to do that. So we'll talk a little bit about the push notification screen, and then we'll also talk about changes in the control panel as it relates to some things we did. The package itself, the self-hosted package, which is it isn't the newest one, 2.1.8. I think it's not out yet. It's going to be out as soon as we get the push done. It's a little bit different structurally, so we changed it around a little bit, and we'll talk about that. But yes, that'll be tomorrow night. I'll be traveling tomorrow. I'm going to pull over, find a Wi-Fi hotspot somewhere, and jump online and grab a cup of coffee and do a webinar from somewhere in mystery land. It'll be fun.
All right. Cool. Well, we're looking forward to that, David. And this webinar will be recorded, or has been recorded, and it'll be posted on our YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. So by this time tomorrow, you should see it up there. And Niraj asks me, and it's a good suggestion, to try to put down time markers as the topics change. And this one, there was so much so fast that I'll probably have to rewatch it and add that at a later date. But don't hesitate to check it out, and you can learn lots from these. And with that, if we don't see you tomorrow night, we'll see you all again really soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Warren.
Bye, David.